Alright guys, so what I'm going to do here is walk you through how to make a graph in Excel when you already have linear data. So what I suggest you do is just set up your screen looking like this. You can label all your intervals, you'll have your dx, dy, and then you can label everything else. I'm going to show you how to use formulas in Excel to expedite making some of these columns. So first of all, I want to make a total dx as a function of total time. So let's click on this total dx. So during the first interval, the total that has traveled is just what it did during the first interval. So whenever I'm doing a formula, I need to put in an equals, and how far it traveled in the first interval was right here. Now I'm going to hit enter, and it will populate that. Now for the second interval, what I want to do is I want to say, well, this is equal to how far it traveled during the second interval plus how far it had traveled previous to. So I'm going to click this button right here, hit enter, and we should see 9.0. Now this is where Excel is really powerful, is if I go to the right hand corner here, I should see that little black cursor, and I can scroll and drag down to my last interval, and we should see all these total distances. Now for the uncertainty of this value, we know that it starts at 0.5 millimeters, but each time I make a measurement, I can make that much of an uncertainty, so we're going to have to figure out what our uncertainty is. For the first one though, we know that it's just going to be equal to 0.5. Now for this one right here, what it's going to be equal to is essentially this one right here times however many intervals we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that it's equal to, well, this cell right here, and I actually don't want this value to change, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put two dollar signs here, which fixes the value in place. And then what I'm going to multiply it by is how many intervals have elapsed. So this value right here. And what this should be, if I did it correctly, is 1.0. Perfect. And now I can scroll down and do that total uncertainty. Now these all have different decimal places, and I want this to the nearest tenth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this decimal, it'll put it to the hundredth, and then I'll put it to the tenth. So total dy uncertainty, I don't really care about that right now because all I want to do is make this dx measurement, because total dx as a function of time is going to be linear, and then I can do lines of min-max fit on it. So now let's go to total time. The Spark table is running at 50 Hertz, so the total time that elapses each interval is 0.02 seconds. So that's what I'm going to put in for the first interval, is I'm just going to put equals 0.02. Okay, and then it's going to be very similar to that uncertainty we just did, is this is going to be equal to 0.02. I don't want this value to change, so I'm going to fix the value. And then I'm just going to multiply it by however many intervals have elapsed. So I'm going to multiply it by this. And let's scroll down and fill all of these. Adjust the decimal. Perfect. Now for my time uncertainty, I've already explained in the PowerPoint presentation that for each interval it's 0.0004. And actually we should adjust all of these to the same precision as the uncertainty. So let's give them two more decimals. Now this one, it's similar to the total uncertainty in the distance measurements, is that this will be additive as well. So let's go equals this value, fix the value, and multiply it by the interval. Okay, we should have all the values we need now to be able to create our graph. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on a blank cell over here, and we're going to insert in an XY scatter plot. Now I need to select data for this, so I'm going to click on that button right there, and I'm going to add some new data. Series name, I can name this right now, but let's actually not label this chart. Let's just pick some data values for it. So what I want for my x values is this is dx as a function of time. So total time is going to be my x. And then how far it travels, total dx is going to be my y. And if we did this correctly, we should see a linear graph. The same one that you saw in the PowerPoint presentation. Now, what I can do here, you guys, is I can just kind of blow this thing up, make it look a little larger. I don't need this title, so I'm just going to delete it. And now, if I want to start adding things to this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Add Chart Element. So when I click on this, I'm going to have to deal with all of these things. So the first thing that I can do is I can label these axes. So let's label my time. So I've labeled my axes now, and going forward, I can just keep on clicking through this. I don't need a chart title. Data labels, don't worry about that. Error bars, this is going to be a big one for us, okay, and probably something that's not super intuitive. So we want to use some custom error bars, so we're going to go down to more error bar options, and then we'll see these format error bars come up. We get these big error bars to start out with here. Clearly that's not what we want. We'll manipulate our horizontal ones first, so that'll be our time uncertainty. So we're going to go to custom, specify value. Our positive error bars are going to be these, as well as our negative error bars. We'll just highlight that whole column. And then I'll apply each of those individual error bars to the points. Not too sure why that didn't work this first time, so let's try that again. So we're going to click on this whole column. The negative error bar, we want the same thing. Click OK, and we should see these error bars. Okay, now you'll notice here that the data points are actually bigger than the error bars. So what I like to do is reduce the size of my data points. Sometimes it's tough to click on them. So if you ever want to click on something, you can go over to this chart options. And what I want is I want my series 1. And I'll click on all my points. Then I want to go to marker. Click on here, marker. I'm going to reduce the size of these markers. So marker options built in. We can keep them as blue, but let's reduce the size so that it's easier to see those error bars. Now, we still need to have some vertical error bars. So what we can do is we can click on Y error bars here. And then we're going to set the value for them. So we're going to customize that. That's what happened the first time, is that I had done that for the Y. So this is going to be my dx uncertainty. So I'm going to highlight this column. I want to do the same thing for the negative error bars. And we should see that. Perfect. So we're getting pretty close to finishing our graph. The next thing that I want to do is I just want to put a few more lines of grid lines in here. Okay, I like the way that this is all spaced. But if we click on here, we can go to major grid lines. However, we haven't selected minor grid lines. So let's go on add chart element, grid lines, and we'll go minor horizontal. And we can also turn on minor vertical. Now they're a little bit difficult to see here, so if we want to change the color of them, we can click on the minor grid lines, go change the color so that they're a little more prominent. And then we'll do the same thing with the major grid lines, just to make them a little darker and easier to see. Okay, now when I'm trying to do my lines of min-max fit, it's easiest if I have lots of grid lines so that I can kind of see where there's going to be data points that I can draw lines through. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create more grid lines. So when I go to my grid line, my axes options, so if I go to my horizontal value axes, I can go to axes options, and what I can do is I can adjust where my minor grid lines are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to 0.02, and I should see more grid lines there. Now axes options, I was looking at horizontal, I can go to vertical now, and let's make this minor 5. Hit enter, and I could see lots of grid lines there. Now you should be able to discern some points that you want to do for your max min lines of best fit. Okay. And what I have actually done beforehand so that I don't waste a bunch of time trying to figure out what these are is I already selected some. So you'll see a little table down here. You'll notice how I created it with my X and Y values for my min fit and for my max fit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my min fit values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select some more data. I'm going to add, and I'm actually going to call this min fit just so I know what it is. My X values for that are going to be X1 and Y1, or sorry, X1 and X2. And then my Y values right here. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to add my max fit now. Okay, and we should see these data points. Now, I played around with these data points a little bit, and let's just say this orange marker right here. If I think that I wanted to have it a little bit lower, what you'll notice is that the Y value for that is 180. I can easily just go down here and adjust it to 170. Hit enter, and you'll notice that it drops it down. And you can play around with these until you get where you want it. However, 180 is the value that I want for this because I think it best represents my data. So now what we can do that we have these is we can start putting in some trend lines. So what I can do is I could just click on whichever series I want. So series 1, let's do a line of best fit right now. So remember, whenever I want to add something in, chart element, trend line, these are linear, so I can create this linear one. Now if I want to format this trend line, I like extrapolating it a little bit forward. So I'm going to extrapolate it forward about 0.1 seconds. And then what I want to do is I want to display the equation on the chart and the r squared value. This is going to be very beneficial for me because it actually tells me the value of the slope right here and how well correlated the trend line is to the data. Now, if we don't want this to be a dotted line, what we can do is we can go over here, We have our color dash type. We can make this a solid line. And then if we want to reduce the size of it a little bit, I can do that. Okay, now because we're going to have multiple trend lines on here, what I like doing is I like color coding this right here with the trend line. So what I can do is in this text box, I can just highlight this and then choose the color of it. I'm going to match the trend line. And then let's just increase the font so that it's easier to see. Okay. Now with this box right here, what I can do is I can look at the border. I can do a solid line around that. And then I'm just going to make that black. I can also do fill for this as well, just so that it looks a little nicer. And then you can see this nice box right here that shows you the equation. Let's do the same thing for my min-max fit now. So let's click on my max fit, add chart element, linear trend line, and we can do the same things that we just did. Let's make it a solid line, reduce the size. Now at this point, you guys, when I have this trend line, these dots right here, they're no longer necessary. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to click on that series for my max fit. I'm going to look at the markers, and I'm actually going to get rid of these markers now. Okay, so marker options, I'm just going to say none, just because I want this line here. With the trend line options, once again, I can go extrapolate this forward a bit. And then in this case, because there's only 2 dots there, that's a little bit far. It's a little better. Is I don't need a r squared value on here. I'm just going to display the equation. And then once again is we can make this more visible, change the font. Change the color of the text to match the trend line. It doesn't necessarily need to be gray. You can change that if you'd like. Let's go with fill of this text box. And let's make a solid line around it. Perfect. You can do those exact same steps with your min now, so you can finish watching this tutorial video. That's the last thing that I'm going to do here, or you can watch me do the steps one more time. Alright guys, and that should be it. So there's your graph. Obviously, this graph right here is for the displacement in the x direction as a function of total time. You'll be doing velocity in the y direction as a function of time, which will also be a linear graph. But that should show you how to make a graph with custom error bars and lines of min-max fit. Hopefully this video is helpful. Thanks for watching it. See ya.